Trust your instincts because betrayal rarely arrives without warning. A woman who is emotionally invested in you does not suddenly transform overnight. Distance, secrecy, irritation, emotional withdrawal, these things do not happen in a vacuum. When loyalty begins to fade, behavior changes first. The truth is, most men ignore the signs because they want to believe love is still there. But when a woman starts giving her energy, attention, and emotional intimacy to someone else, her actions begin exposing what her words try to hide. Cheating is not always discovered through confession, it is discovered through patterns. The way she looks at you changes. The way she responds changes. The warmth disappears. The patience disappears. The emotional safety you once felt begins turning into confusion. And if you know what to look for, you can recognize the signs before the truth ever comes out. Understanding these patterns is not about paranoia, it is about awareness, emotional intelligence. And protecting yourself from being the last person to know your relationship is already broken. When a woman begins cheating, one of the earliest and most painful signs is emotional distance. The affection that once felt natural starts to disappear without warning. She no longer reaches for your hand the way she used to. Her hugs become shorter, colder, less meaningful. The kisses that once carried passion begin to feel routine-like obligation instead of desire. You notice that her warmth is fading, but whenever you ask what is wrong, she gives vague answers or tells you that you are imagining things. That happens because emotional energy is limited. When a woman begins investing her emotions, attention, and intimacy into someone else, she often has less left to give the man she is betraying. The connection that once felt effortless starts becoming forced. Conversations lose depth. She stops asking about your day with genuine interest. She no longer seems excited to spend time with you. Even when you are together, it feels like her mind is somewhere else. What makes this sign so dangerous is that many men ignore it. They tell themselves she is just stressed, tired, or going through something personal. And sometimes that may be true. But when emotional distance becomes a pattern instead of a temporary phase, it should not be dismissed. Because a woman who loves you deeply does not repeatedly make you feel emotionally alone while standing right beside you. You begin sensing that the relationship has changed, even if nothing obvious has happened yet. The laughter fades. The playful energy disappears. The intimacy becomes rare or mechanical. It feels like you are trying to connect with someone who is physically present but emotionally unavailable. And that is the real warning sign, not just less affection, but unexplained detachment. When a woman starts pulling away emotionally without communication, she may be feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or uncertain about her feelings. Without effort to fix it, and without concern for how it affects you, it often means her heart is no longer where it used to be. Emotional withdrawal is rarely random. It usually signals that something deeper has changed beneath the surface. Another major sign that something may be wrong is when her phone and privacy habits suddenly become secretive and guarded. A woman who once had no issue leaving her phone on the table, handing it to you casually, or texting openly around you may begin acting completely differently. Now the phone is always face down. It never leaves her hand. She takes it into every room, even places where she never used to. And if you happen to glance at the screen, she quickly turns it away or locks it immediately. The issue is not that she values privacy. Everyone deserves personal space. The concern is the sudden behavioral shift. When someone drastically changes how protective they are of their devices, messages, or online activity without explanation, they are considered to be at risk of being hacked or compromised. That change often signals hidden communication they do not want discovered. It is not the phone itself that matters, that is the secrecy surrounding it. You may notice she starts changing passwords when she never cared before. Notifications disappear from her lock screen. She silences calls that used to come through normally. She becomes defensive or angry if you ask simple questions like, "Who was that?" Even when your tone is calm. Instead of reassurance, you get hostility. Instead of transparency, you get walls. Why? Because secrecy often creates defensiveness. When someone has something to hide, even innocent curiosity feels threatening to them. A person hiding betrayal becomes hyper-aware of access. They begin treating their phone like a vault because that device may contain the conversations, photos, or evidence they cannot risk exposing. Many men make the mistake of ignoring this sign because they do not want to seem insecure or controlling. But noticing suspicious behavior is not insecurity, it is awareness. Trust does not require blindness. Healthy relationships have boundaries, but they also have openness. When secrecy replaces openness and defensiveness replaces reassurance, the dynamic has changed. If her entire attitude around privacy shifts overnight and her phone becomes more protected than the relationship itself, that is not something to overlook. Sudden secrecy is often the behavior of someone trying to protect more than just their privacy. It may be the behavior of someone protecting the truth. A woman who is cheating often begins picking unnecessary fights and becoming irritated over things that never used to bother her. Small issues suddenly turn into major arguments. Harmless comments become reasons for conflict. Habits she once accepted without complaint now seem to frustrate her constantly. You may feel like no matter what you do, she is always annoyed, always critical, always looking for something to be upset about. This shift often has less to do with your behavior and more to do with what is happening inside her. When someone is betraying their partner, guilt creates emotional pressure. One of the most common psychological defenses against that guilt is projection, finding reasons to justify the betrayal by convincing themselves the relationship is flawed or the partner is inadequate. If she can paint you as the problem, then in her mind, what she is doing feels less wrong. That is why she may start criticizing everything. The way you talk, the way you dress, the way you handle stress. Even your smallest mistakes become magnified. She becomes impatient with you. Not necessarily because you changed, but because her perception of you is being distorted by her need to rationalize her actions. Sometimes these arguments are also used to create emotional distance. Conflict gives her an excuse to withdraw. If she can keep tension between you, she does not have to face intimacy, closeness, or the discomfort of pretending everything is normal. Constant fighting becomes a way to separate emotionally while still staying physically in the relationship. What makes this sign painful is that it leaves you confused. You begin questioning yourself. You wonder if you're doing something wrong. You start walking on eggshells trying to avoid upsetting her. But the truth is, when someone is determined to be irritated, peace becomes impossible because a conflict is not really about the issue, it is about what they are hiding behind it. If she is suddenly argumentative, unusually critical, and emotionally hostile over things that never mattered before, pay attention. Sometimes unnecessary conflict is not about anger, it is about guilt looking for somewhere to go. Another warning sign is when her schedule suddenly changes and she becomes noticeably harder to reach. A woman who once kept you informed, responded consistently, and maintained predictable routines may begin operating in ways that no longer make sense. She starts working late more often. New commitments appear out of nowhere. She becomes busy during hours when she was normally available. Plans become vague, explanations become short, and her whereabouts start feeling less clear than they used to. By itself, being busy means nothing. People's lives change. But when her schedule shifts dramatically and transparency disappears at the same time, that combination can be a serious red flag. You may notice longer response times to messages, missed calls that go unanswered for hours, or periods where she seems unreachable without a believable explanation. And when you ask about it, her answers may feel rushed, inconsistent, or defensive. This happens because deception often requires time and space. Someone involved in another connection must create opportunities to communicate, meet, or emotionally invest elsewhere. That usually means their routine begins changing to accommodate what they are hiding. The more secretive the behavior, the more unpredictable the schedule often becomes. What makes this especially troubling is the inconsistency. Her stories may not fully line up. Details change. Timelines feel off. You catch small contradictions, not enough to prove anything, but enough to create doubt. She may tell you she was with one person, then later mention something that suggests otherwise. Individually, each inconsistency may seem minor. Together, they form a pattern. You begin sensing that her life has developed a side you no longer have access to, and that feeling matters. In healthy relationships, even when life gets busy, there is still communication, reassurance, and effort to maintain trust. A woman who respects the relationship does not repeatedly leave you confused about where she is, what she is doing, or why she suddenly feels unavailable. When someone becomes harder to reach without clear reason and their routine starts revolving around unexplained absence, it may not just mean they are busy, it may mean they are making room for someone else in the time that used to belong to you. A powerful sign that a woman may be emotionally disconnecting and potentially investing elsewhere is when she stops including you in her future plans and emotional world. A woman who truly sees you as her partner naturally speaks in terms of we. She talks about future trips, upcoming goals, holidays, plans months ahead, and the life you are building together. But when that language disappears, it often reflects something deeper than simple distraction. You begin noticing she no longer brings you into conversations about the future. She talks about upcoming events without mentioning you. She makes plans independently without asking your input. Important decisions that once involved discussion now happen without your knowledge. It starts to feel like she is organizing her life as if you are no longer central to it. At the same time, emotional intimacy fades. She stops opening up the way she used to. She no longer shares her fears, dreams, frustrations, or inner thoughts. Conversations that once felt deep and connected become surface level and transactional. You may still talk, but the emotional closeness is gone. She is communicating with you, but not confiding in you. This matters because emotional investment and future vision are deeply connected. When a woman is emotionally committed, she instinctively includes the man she loves in both her plans and her vulnerability. If she begins removing you from both, it can indicate that she no longer sees the relationship as part of her long-term emotional reality. Sometimes this happens because her emotional energy is being directed elsewhere. She may be sharing her deeper thoughts, hopes, and personal struggles with another person instead. And once someone else becomes her emotional outlet, your role in her inner world starts shrinking. What makes this sign so painful is that it often happens quietly. There is no dramatic argument, no obvious betrayal, just a slow disappearance from the future she once imagined with you. You realize she no longer talks like someone building a life beside you. She talks like someone building a life around you. And when a woman stops making you part of her emotional and future vision, it often means her heart is no longer standing where her body is. The final sign is one many men overlook because it seems positive on the surface: sudden overcompensation through unusual kindness. Most people expect a cheating partner to become cold, distant, or hostile, but sometimes guilt produces the opposite effect. Instead of pulling away, she may begin acting unusually sweet, affectionate, generous, or attentive in ways that feel out of character for her. She may start buying you random gifts without a clear reason. She becomes extra affectionate after being emotionally distant for weeks. She suddenly initiates intimacy more often, praises you more than usual, or goes out of her way to do things she normally would not do. On the surface, it looks like improvement, but deep down, something feels off. The kindness does not feel natural. It feels timed. It feels forced. It feels like it is coming from guilt rather than genuine emotional closeness. Why does this happen? Because when someone is betraying a partner, guilt creates internal conflict. They know they are doing something wrong, and part of them wants to reduce that emotional discomfort. One way people unconsciously do this is by overcompensating, giving extra affection to balance out the harm they know they are causing. It becomes a psychological attempt to quiet their conscience. This is especially suspicious when the affection appears after unexplained absences, strange behavior, or moments where you were likely to become suspicious. She may return from being distant, unavailable, or secretive and suddenly become extremely loving, as if trying to cover the emotional trail she left behind. Of course, kindness alone is not evidence of betrayal. People can become more affectionate for many healthy reasons. The issue is when the affection is inconsistent, unnatural, and appears specifically around suspicious patterns. Real love is steady. Guilt-driven affection is often erratic. When a woman becomes unusually kind in a way that feels disconnected from the true emotional state of the relationship, she may be experiencing a sense of disconnection from the other person's feelings. Do not just look at the affection, look at the timing. Sometimes excessive sweetness is not a sign of growing love. Sometimes it is the behavior of someone trying to hide the weight of their own conscience. The first sign is emotional distance. A woman who once craved your attention, your touch, your presence now feels cold. Her hugs become shorter. Her kisses become routine. Her eyes no longer light up when you walk in the room. And when you ask what is wrong, she says nothing. But deep down, you know something has shifted. Because when a woman starts investing emotionally elsewhere, she often withdraws emotionally from the man she is betraying. She may still be physically present, but spiritually and emotionally, she has checked out. The affection becomes forced. The intimacy becomes mechanical. And the warmth that once defined your relationship starts disappearing without explanation. The second sign is secrecy with her phone and private life. If she used to leave her phone around casually and now suddenly takes it everywhere, even to the bathroom, that shift matters. If she angles her screen away from you, changes passwords, deletes messages, or becomes defensive when you simply glance at her notifications, pay attention. Privacy is healthy. Sudden secrecy is different. A woman protecting innocent privacy does not panic when you are near her phone. But a woman hiding something becomes hyper-aware of access. She treats her phone like evidence because in many cases that is exactly what it is. The third sign is unnecessary conflict. Strange as it sounds, guilt often turns into aggression. When someone cheats, they may subconsciously create distance by starting arguments over small things. She becomes irritated by habits she once tolerated. She criticizes you more. She snaps at minor mistakes. Why? Because when a person feels guilty, one psychological defense mechanism is to villainize the partner they are betraying. If she can convince herself you are the problem, then she feels less guilty about what she is doing behind your back. So the constant criticism, the short temper, the emotional hostility sometimes, it is not about what you did. It is about what she is trying to justify to herself. The fourth sign is a sudden shift in routine. She becomes harder to reach. She starts working late more often. New girls' nights appear out of nowhere. She disappears for hours with vague explanations. Her schedule becomes inconsistent, and her stories do not always align. Of course, life gets busy, but when her routine changes dramatically and transparency disappears with it, that is not something to ignore. Loyalty thrives in consistency. Deception thrives in unpredictability. The fifth sign is that she stops building the future with you. A woman who loves you includes you in her long-term vision. She talks about future trips, goals, dreams, plans. But when her emotional investment shifts elsewhere, that future-oriented energy disappears. She stops asking where the relationship is going. She stops discussing what comes next. She becomes emotionally detached from us and starts living more in me. Because mentally, she may already be preparing for a life where you are no longer central to her future. The sixth sign is overcompensation through unusual kindness. Sometimes guilt does not create distance, it creates excess. She may suddenly become overly affectionate, buy random gifts, initiate intimacy more than usual, or act unnaturally sweet after suspicious behavior. Why? Because guilt seeks balance. A cheating partner may try to ease their conscience by overcompensating, by giving you extra affection to mask what they know they are taking from you. It is not always distance that reveals betrayal. Sometimes it is affection that feels strangely timed, forced, or inconsistent with her recent behavior. At the end of the day, no single sign proves infidelity, but patterns matter. Energy matters. Consistency matters. People can lie with words, but behavior always leaks the truth. If the woman you love no longer acts like the woman who loved you, do not ignore that reality just because the truth hurts. Loyalty is not just about what someone says, it is about what they consistently show. And the moment you start noticing repeated signs that peace has been replaced with confusion, trust has been replaced with secrecy, and love has been replaced with distance, you owe it to yourself to stop pretending not to see what is right in front of you.